let's start with the introduction, Stefania, if you want, and then I hope people will
Okay,
continue
we
to
can,
joining.
I think we can start. Okay, so dear ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this first webinar of the series of online events Beyond the Hype, dedicated to artificial intelligence. I remind that this event is recorded and the recording will be available in the DeepSync platform. My name is Stefania De Santi and I am the coordinator of the EIC Communities project, a project financed by Horizon Europe program and coordinated by APRE, the Italian agency for the promotion of European research and implemented together with its partners, EURA, the European Business Innovation Network, ABN, and ICONS. The project aims at boosting the visibility and impact of EIC projects, but also to build communities around them and involving relevant stakeholders and stimulate discussion about deep tech topics. To do this, it seeks to foster the innovation ecosystem by setting up 3 communities of practices: cleantech, health, and industry. These communities share tools and resources and serve as platforms for co-creation and online and physical activities, thus nurturing a collaborative multidisciplinary environment for EIC projects. As artificial intelligence has rapidly evolved from an abstract concept into a transformative force shaping industries and societies worldwide and has high impact on all the sectors, we are cooperating with the EIC Programme Manager Hedi Karray in the organization of this series of events. So I want to thank Hedi for his support and collaboration. I invite all the today participants to visit the DeepSync platform developed within the EIC Communities project. You can find there the link then in the chat. There you have the possibility to discover the EIC projects that are participating to our communities of practices, their stories, the stakeholders that join the communities, and the event activities we are going to organize, including the next webinars of the series Beyond Hype. I suggest also to visit the dedicated page to the Future Tech Week, a week-long online event celebrating research and innovation. Taking place from the 7th to the 11th of April, the Future Tech Week will offer participants a unique opportunity to showcase their projects and engage with the stakeholders through tailored activities. The event will provide a collaborative space to share knowledge, inspire innovation, and build meaningful connection across the European deep tech landscape. So I give the floor now to the EIC Programme Manager for Artificial Intelligence, Hedi Karray, and I thank you, Hedi, again for your valuable collaboration with our project. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Stefania. Hello, everyone. Very glad to launch this series of webinars to talk about the limitation of AI and the next capabilities, really beyond the hype. AI is a historical topic, and since a lot of years we have waves of AI, winters and springs, and a lot of hype. So we really would like to dive deeply in this topic in terms of reality of the state of the art, in terms of innovation in AI, what we are expecting in the future, and what are the next innovations. So that's why we launched this series of webinars. It will be run from February to June this year as a key objectives for this webinars. So first thing, as I said, is to understand what is really innovation behind the AI and understand what is the current state of the progress and behind the hype of this artificial general intelligence, people saying it will come this year, others in 2 years, and a lot of speculation around the topic. So would like really to deep with experts from different backgrounds, go through also real world applications, so to have some real cases, especially from startups funded by the EIC and supported by EIC, that they are doing breakthrough innovation on the topic. And also the schema that we we have selected for this webinars is to have people from different backgrounds. So for the series of webinars, we will usually have people from research areas, so from academia or from industry. Then we have someone from startup to present their perspectives. Also, a social and humanities sciences to talk about the perspectives of the impact of AI and how we deal with it, and also people from investment background, from VCs, from banks, from different perspective regarding investing in innovation. And then we have also panel to I think this is one of the rare times that we have those different backgrounds together around the table to discuss the topic, because usually there is, silos. Scientists are discussing from their side, investors from their side, and so on. So would like to have all those people around the table and to talk about this AI innovation. Today, this the first webinar, and we have the chance to have a very high distinguished speakers from those different backgrounds. So I will go later through their bio and their backgrounds. Just to mention that, as I said, this is the first webinar. So we will have a second one on March 20. And then during the Future Tech Week, we'll have 5 webinars. So from 7th to 11th of April, and then 2 more in May and June. So go through the website and be informed and updated regarding those upcoming events. So just to let you know, the next one will be on cognitive AI on 20th of March. So how to bridge the gap between human and machine intelligence. And again, we have a very high distinguished speakers. So you have the link for registration, and we'll be happy to see you there also and participate and discuss together those topical issue about AI innovation. Just to give you a quick background on the Innovation Council. So we are providing funding for innovation programs. So we have 3 kind of programs going from very low TRL to very high TRL. So what we are doing is closing the loop of bringing research from the lab to the market. So we are funding early stage research, and also we are finding startups to scale up and to go to the market. So I let you have a look on our website to learn more about our different programs. Just to give an example, so our work program for this year, 2025, we have a budget, a very ambitious program with a budget more than 1.4 billion euros to fund different programs. And as you can see, we have a lot of focus on AI, on Gen AI, AI for medical aspects, also on the robotics for construction. So I invite you to have a look on our program, and we'll be happy to see your applications to be funded by the EIC. All right, so I would like to give the floor to our distinguished speakers today, and the first one will be Professor Amit Shet from University of South Carolina. He's an educator, researcher, and also entrepreneur. He is also the NCR chair and a professor of computer science, and also he founded the university-wide AI Institute at the University of South Carolina. So happy to have you, Professor Shet, today as a speaker, and I give you the floor. So we'll have for questions later, so you can use the chat to ask your questions, and happy to give the floor to Professor Shet.
Great. Let me see if I can. Well, it is I'm very delighted to be part of this activity. Thank you everyone for joining, and thank you for inviting me. I've been given the task of talking about probably one of the most important component of the next generation of AI systems, reasoning and abstraction. These are very key components of building the intelligence in the AI system, along with the two other important characteristics, robustness and trustworthiness. Um, I have been an entrepreneur, founded three and co-founded fourth company, three of them by licensing my own university research, and three of them are in AI. So it's good that here there is an objective to support entrepreneurs here. At the AI Institute, we have a very strong foundational AI agenda, and here, for this talk, it kind of belongs to this intelligent, robust, and trustworthy AI theme, along with use of neo-symbolic AI approaches. And you can see that we work, we have collaborations with many different areas. One of the distinguished feature of our work is that practically all our work has real world problems, real world data, collaborations from those domains, and then we do AI research, prototyping, and very often they result in evaluations with real world, again, benchmarks, and often it results in tools, technologies that are deployed, and sometimes we spun off companies. I just put out a report. The title is C-Cube AN, Custom Compact Composite AI Systems. The thing that we talk about in this report is what is, how the AI will evolve. I see the theme here about, next generation of AI. And this is my take in that Gartner recently noted that within 3 years, 50% of the AI systems will be enterprise AI system involving technology that is not primarily based on large language models, which is all the rage now. So while for content and issues and for creativity, LLMs and VLMs work very well. For enterprise applications, you're going to need, what I have characterized as the intelligent, robust, and trustworthy AI. And you can see here on the left hand side, there are 14 important foundational elements. I'm asked to talk about two of them today, the reasoning and the analogy. We have papers and articles on all of the on most of these, more than 10 of these. So if you are interested in our views on how each of these elements can be supported, they are available for you to pursue. Now, a core to our approach is this neo-symbolic AI, and I'm going to do a very fast introduction on that. Basically, this involves combining the neural networks and deep learning on one side, and the knowledge graph and knowledge representation on the other side. And by connecting these two, you get a system that supports those 14 elements much better. This is something at least my team started working long time ago. In fact, my second commercial company had combined both statistical machine learning classifiers and knowledge graph for semantic search. That was in year 2000, and we have been doing this work in this area for quite some time. Daniel Kahneman has popularized this concept of system 1 or thinking fast, and system 2 thinking slow. Before I came to know about his ideas, which have been very influential, I had also written about semantic, cognitive, and perceptual computing. You'll find a lot more about this general theme in the class series of papers on that topic. But what I want to basically say is that our brain pursues both of these perceptual and cognitive aspects of learning and intelligence, and in the process utilizes broad variety of knowledge. And right now, as you are listening to me, you are using your understanding of grammar and lexical knowledge. You are using your linguistic knowledge, you are using your common sense knowledge, you are using a broad and general purpose knowledge and or world model, and you are using domain specific knowledge. All of these are being used. Imagine how would you expect a data driven generative AI system to support intelligence and to support certain features if you are not using all this knowledge, because that current system is heavily reliant on large data, but they don't utilize knowledge very well. But there are increasing number of uh, uh, examples where use of knowledge is shown to be um, very valuable in improving the results. For the lack of time, I am not going to discuss them in detail. Now, coming to the first topic of reasoning, there have been classically number of forms of reasoning that have been discussed: deductive, inductive, abductive. I assume that most of you are well aware of these things. Reasoning is just so fundamental to problem solving, decision making, and scientific inquiry. So, how do you support all of these in your system, in your AI system? Now, evolution of the AI reasoning, has involved classical AI based, logic based reasoning. It has involved semantic AI, knowledge driven reasoning, and currently there is a statistical and pattern based reasoning. There is reasoning model like R1 and O1, and what because the word reasoning is used with along with these variants of the LLMs, they seem to imply that they can do a lot, but in my view they do very small fraction of reasoning that will be necessary, especially for decision making in enterprises. So LLMs have a whole bunch of limitations in what they call as reasoning, but the chain of thoughts is coming out as a very interesting option. And yet, if you think about chain of thoughts, really a long chain of thoughts would involve very substantial human involvement in guiding their process. So it's not something that LLM is all that intelligent per se. And there's of course reinforcement RL, and that also has that works very well for certain applications, let's say chess or Go, but not necessarily for many other applications. So in the real world, the reasoning requires external knowledge, heuristics, and structured rules that are not part of current framework of LLM reasoning. And there are a number of things that LLM fail in the real world reasoning. They perform well on benchmarks, but if you go to real world reasoning, given the uncertainty and complex knowledge involved, they don't do that well. So I'll give an example, but basically there are a whole bunch of requirements reasoning. This is a slide, rather old slide. On the right hand side, I'm showing an ontology, and we have Barry Smith, who is an expert in ontology development. In this context, we had the need to find semantic association between somebody who's trying to open a bank account and all the various lists like Bank of England sanction list and federal sanction list and so on and so forth, and trying to find meaningful complex relationship is very challenging. I'm showing you here a relatively complex relationship that involves connecting entities through meaningful specific relationship types. So it's not arbitrarily relationship purely based on probabilities and based on the patterns. it is something that you are only interested in specific relationship. So here, after having found the relationship, you are doing scoring. So there is a combination of both, the classical reasoning as well as statistical, information that would be necessary for supporting this kind of real world complex relationships and reasoning. Currently, we are working on a very exciting project on school behavioral health and mental health. And basically, here the reasoning would involve a series of steps where John has a anger issue. John is a student, and that there will be a series of things. School counselor says John will be part of Mr. A's anger management class, but then there is a protocol or rule or regulation saying, well, if John is less than 17, there should be an MD, a doctor present, and that we don't. Then school says, but we don't have budget for that, and then district comes back and say we have budget for that. So this reasoning can be fairly complex, involving abductive and deductive reasoning, and it requires grounding in domain process knowledge. Here is another example where it gives you insight of what is involved in reasoning. For example, you see a text here, really struggling with my bisexuality and such. This is a Reddit text, and we are trying to understand whether this is indicative of OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder. And there is a specific definition of OCD with specific required concepts in that. Now, when you see, so what happens is that you are going to have to understand whether in this text you have grounding for some of those concepts necessary in classifying this as OCD. And so here we use knowledge graph, and what is important is that you may map a term to a concept in a knowledge graph, and then you may use taxonomic information to get a higher level of representation which may be mentioned in your definition. So you may use taxonomic knowledge representation as part of this whole reasoning process. So you can see that the reasoning that will allow you to explain that this is an example of OCD, or this person exhibits OCD, is fairly complex, and without purely based on statistical approach, it would have been very, very hard and low quality. Moving to the second topic I was asked to address is abstraction. And I here start with a real, a person who has really made foundational contribution to this area, Douglas Hofstadter, the guy who wrote the Gödel, Escher, Bach book, very, very well-known book. So he said, analogies are core of cognition, and abstraction are the representations that fuel analogical reasoning. This is how we learn new concepts and make sense of new situations. Now, what is interesting is that today's, so here you are using a solar system as an analogy of atoms. And then the top figure shows that there is a whole ladder of abstractions that you go from the thing in itself, how do we see it, name of that thing, it's a cow, it's a part of, is a type of livestock, farm asset and wealth. All these kind of levels of abstractions are necessary to have this human level of intelligence and to do analogies effectively. So if you want to have verbal analogies like oxygen is to gas as aluminum is to metal, now what happens here is that there are some kinds of these things that language models do fairly good at, because there is enough data available. But what happens is that analogy is relatively complex subject. So you have a simple lexical analogies, then you have syntactic analogies, a cat meowed at me and dog barked at my brother. Then you have semantic ontologies, she has a heart of gold. And then you have pragmatic ontologies. As you go up this levels of abstraction for analogies and more complex analogies as you go up, the current strategies, current AI models rather fail. Here I have given a concrete example where in a school curriculum we are using quilting as a way to understand carbon cycle in the course on earth sciences. So earth and climate science, that you have concept of carbon cycle, and you can see this is not a simple thing. There are multiple concepts involved: carbon, poly synthesis, sugar, animal eats, all that kind of stuff. And the representation of this whole concept of carbon cycle has a variety of concepts that are stratified. You have entity level animals, but then you have more complex subgraph with individual components where carbon and sugar are connected. Finding the analogies here involves structured representation. So in our case, we advocate a neurosymbolic approach for identifying such abstractions informed not only by data and co-occurrence, which LLMs can do well, but also relevant knowledge, typically represented in knowledge graphs. So this is a so going towards this kind of analogy and support high level of abstraction requires you to really have this neurosymbolic approach that I've been advocating. Here you see that earlier I shown you this whole variety of knowledge, and here you see, for example, a text. What you need to do, this happens to be a text in drug abuse area, and we developed a very comprehensive ontology called drug abuse ontology, and you are trying to understand entities, relationship, sentiment, interval at which the drug is administered, dosage, route of administration like snorting or injecting. So there are a lot of concepts and types of concepts to be understood here, and in this particular project and approach, we use variety of knowledge to understand variety of complex concepts, and then understand the abstractions that led to more intelligence in our system. I kind of rushed through much of what I had to cover and my immediate team as well as the AI Institute team, you can see there. Okay, so a number of funding and I'm open to question. I think I have left enough time.
Great. Thank you very much for this very nice presentation and also covering this topic. So what you had in mind from the beginning is to discuss the capabilities of AI systems. So the limitations of the current, like most known LLM systems, and then those capabilities to improve the AI systems with reasoning and abstraction and such kind of more intelligence features, let's say that. So the chat is open for asking questions, but waiting this question, I will start with my question regarding this hype with most of generative AI providers. They claim that they are covering those capabilities of reasoning, of abstraction, and so on. So when we take now the DeepSeek or the DeepThink of DeepSeek. So, can you comment on that and what is still missed there, comparing what you are expecting from those capabilities?
Yeah, I actually had a slide on LLM limitations for reasoning, and the same general thing also applies on analogies and abstraction. And we do have papers specifically in showing this advanced reasoning or abstraction and compare them for how much of the thing can be done by LLMs. Of course, LLMs are evolving very fast, right? So we had papers last year, but then since then these so-called reasoning models have come in. But broadly speaking, as I was trying to explain with real-world examples of this behavioral health or finding complex relationship related to security applications, these kind of things where you have specific name relationships that you need to understand. This cannot be done by LLMs very well. You have to have, now LLMs have been showing some fantastic results. Unfortunately, we find out that in many cases LLMs have seen that data. There was one very interesting paper that came out, that came out where LLMs were shown to be doing very well at some mathematical reasoning task, and then they simply changed the variable names, and that same system worked very fairly poorly, right? So what it is that there is essentially these are keyword and syntax based things, right? So when you are creating a vector space and then use the multi-dimensional vector space as your parameter space, you only captured how the tokens and the words in the data fed in the pre-training are related, and the statistics related to the in probabilities that these two words are together. You don't know why they are together. So the fact that these concepts are related to each other, even if you can find complex concepts through in LLM, which is itself a hard thing, you can find words and other things very well. Complex concept is still little words, but some of them it can be done. But why those concepts are related to each other, in what context they are related to each other, you can the systems don't understand. So I have another long keynote I've given at several places on what these statistical AI systems do is to do NLP, natural language processing. It can do with a very large corpus, it can do translation exceptionally well, but they can't do natural language understanding. Big difference between natural language processing and natural language understanding. And so understanding requires those entities, those relationships in particular, understanding the complex concepts, and they are represented not as some you look at the example of analogy at the base level, word level analogies or sentence level analogies, they can do very well, because for surface structures and the word occurrences can really help find those. The moment you go up with these complex analogies and complex representations, which is what is in the real world.
So if I
Carbon
were to
fibers in
understand,
the
like,
real world, you can't do that. So there they fail.
so if I were to understand your hypothesis, so the neurosymbolic AI is one of the ways to resolve this and to scale on these capabilities, right?
Yes, explicitly engaging the knowledge. So you either infuse the knowledge. I talked about shallow, semi-deep, and deep infusions. There are multiple ways you can you can take knowledge to improve the attention mechanism, or there are other things you can incorporate knowledge at different layers in the neural network. Dealing with, because it has been shown that different layers of the network handle information roughly at different level of abstraction, and then you can also do externally using RAG. You also of course incorporate knowledge, use you can take knowledge graph and use it for fine tuning. So there are multiple
So what you
ways.
are, if I can summarize, so you are suggesting to move from data-driven AI to knowledge-driven AI.
Yes,
We can
data driven
conclude
AI
on that.
to, yes, to one that where knowledge, explicit knowledge and knowledge structures are a very important part of them. Whether you include them in the statistical space, parameter space, or you elicit the information from models, language models, and do the reasoning outside.
That's
There are multiple ways that you can combine.
That's great. Thank you very much again for your presentation, and we'll move now with the second speaker that will build on that and to provide more AI capabilities from real world examples. So the next speaker is Kerem. Kerem is VP product. If I will. Got it. So he's the VP of product at Deep Opinion. Deep Opinion is one of the startups that EIC believe on it and we support. So I give you the floor, Kerem, so to provide what you have in Deep Opinion and what are the future regarding the agentic automation.
Great. Thank you very much. You can see my screen, right?
Yes, perfectly.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, my name is Kerem Sözgeçer. I lead product engineering and R&D at Deep Opinion. Yeah, we have close ties with EIC, so I'm very happy to be here. Thanks for the invitation. Yeah, the history of the company goes back actually beyond large language models when we actually got into this business with via trained models, and then it evolved into generative AI. And the thing that we, in a nutshell, we do is we put back office operations on autopilot. So what does that mean? We think the future is autonomous for enterprises, and yet thousands of workers, millions of workers, hundreds of millions of people doing mundane tasks such as data entry, trying to manually convert unstructured data into structured data, and it's just waste of humanity's time, and it needs to change. And we're here to change that. Just a quick example on what we do. We're currently focusing on insurance and finance industries. These are some of the customers that we have. Basically, our agentic process automation is kind of like the next generation. It started with RPA. Automation started with RPA, automating a lot of the tasks. But the agentic process automation is a huge space. It has limitless implications, and we're just really scratching the surface. The way we see how this works in our business is there are multiple parameters. We basically put together a formula, a business value for the enterprises that our customers are say, autonomy plus control times velocity. So autonomy is the straight-through processing, how much you can fully automate a process. Control is human always under control. You want to be able to give humans control to utilize how much to select how much they want to utilize AI, how much control they want to have, how much checks and balances they want to have in an end-to-end process. And velocity is how quickly you can go to market with it. It's time to value, basically. How quickly can you get the solution up and running to really disrupt your businesses and optimize everything? One big example is we've recently started with the largest insurance company in the world, Allianz. Essentially, we are trying to disrupt the insurance business because it's a very cumbersome and outdated business. In some sense, it's a lot needs to change, not only from the insurance company perspective, but by the consumers as well, for the benefit of the consumers. And we are currently working on automating the travel travel insurance. So if you miss a flight, for whatever reason, you submit a claim, and you want to get your money back for that. And we are doing an end-to-end automation with them. So that means somebody submits a claim, and they get a result all the way through our system. How the implication of this is, everybody knows insurance well. It's actually quite a good use case to explain it to people when I try to explain what we do. Essentially, insurance claims take time, sometimes weeks, multiple weeks, and it's a very frustrating process. And in reality, on the left box, it's a very fragmented process within an insurance company. It's not a department that actually goes through an insurance claim. It actually goes through tens of different departments and groups that don't even know each other, and that's a cumbersome process, and it takes so much time. It might take up to five weeks. With what we're doing, we're able to get a decision under 90 seconds, basically end-to-end decision. So you submit your claim. Technically speaking, you can get an answer within 90 seconds. However, there's the compliance and regulations and etc. that kind of add pauses things and just slows things down a little bit. But still, we're talking about minutes, 10 minutes at the most, even with these processes involved. This is completely scaled up. Some of the use cases is, again, Hanover Re is a large reinsurance company, and 10-minute claim settle guarantee. Basically, they offer via using Deep Opinion, and also CED is a process automation company. It basically employs thousands of people for data processing. taking invoices, taking order notes, taking all these simple documents and really translating them into, like, entering it into a system, basically data entry and stuff that doesn't require a lot of expertise. The way we're implementing it now, obviously, this is an enterprise implementation, right? Technically speaking, it is fairly quickly to implement a solution in our system. You can literally do it in a simple case within 10 to 15 minutes. We've shown this in demos in the past. But when it comes to actually fully automating a process in an insurance company or a bank, there's a lot of things that need to be done because, it's a big company. Like I said, it's very fragmented. You need to get all these groups together. So you need to do a lot of discovery at first, and then you need to do a proof of concept with limited data sets to start building an end-to-end case. And then you start the implementation, again, discussions with the internal organizations. And then, in about 7 to 10 weeks, you can go live, and we provide the service as risk-free. This is a POC, and then we guarantee that we're going to show a significant improvement in overall processes and performance. So how does that work from an app perspective? Essentially, we have two components, what we call AI Builder, and then we have an Automation Builder. AI Builder is basically the capability of building agentic skills that can do certain tasks, such as, classify a document that came in through an email address, and then, if it's an invoice, treat it differently, take it to the next AI skill to extract information from the invoice, or if it's something else, some other personal document, or like a legal document, by classifying it first and sending it to the correct AI skill, you can basically take actions and solve issues. The Automation Builder is the key part, is where you can actually chain all these different AI models or AI skills to kind of work together one after the other, as you can see in the top right. This is what we call an end-to-end process. So, it's like the Allianz use case. And Allianz, we will build we will build a full automation end-to-end, accessing a specific email inbox, downloading all the emails, looking at the body, looking at the attachments, classifying them, comparing it against the policy, making sure that actually it fits in the policy. If there's any missing, document completion, if there are any documents missing, and then if there's document missing, it goes back to the customer automatically. And then, it reprocesses when the documents come. So it's a very complex process that goes through a lot of check balances, policy checks, vulnerability checks, and until a decision is made. So this agentic, so it actually fits perfectly with the previous presentation, and I'm glad to have seen that. So agentic, everybody's talking about agentic. It's a big hype now. And we've gone through a lot of research. We're a very research-driven company. We're less product. Now we're becoming more product-driven, but we are a research first company. So everything goes through deep research with our research team. And there are multiple ways of doing it. The agentic approach that the market thinks, where the hype is that the LLMs is going to do everything. You can ask anything to LLM. It works well. It's going to answer all your questions. It's going to solve all your problems. It's going to do the reasoning, comparison flawlessly. That's not the case. And essentially, it is nowhere near being ready to actually fully automate an enterprise level process. So, like was mentioned before, for creative stuff, generating text and summarizing, etc., it works quite well. But we're talking about, financial documents. We're talking about insurance claims that has huge financial impacts if a mistake is done. Right. So these are very regulated, highly sensitive business processes that cannot make mistakes. Right. And our goal as the company is not just automation, but we're actually going after 100% automation, what we call 100% straight-through processing. So no human touch, end-to-end claim processing, or whatever other type of processing there is with various customers. So dynamic multi-agent systems, and we've tested all of this, and then there's some results in the next slide, is non-deterministic, It's stacking of LLM calls. It hallucinates, and the fact that it's non-determined, it's unstable. Sometimes it's completely makes things up, and or completely just makes the wrong decision. And even though it works, even though it's easy to set it up, when it comes to, again, insurance claims and financial documents, sensitive stuff, that it's nowhere near being ready for production. They're nowhere near being production ready. So our approach is neurosymbolic agent system. So it is, LLMs are powerful. It opens up a lot of the doors. So some of the solutions that we have actually are possible because of large language models. But because you can't use it, so you have to have some checks and balances and rules, basically a hybrid approach to getting these solutions done. And by doing that, we believe we can reach close to 100% autonomy in the near future for specific use cases. So just to kind of give you an indication, based on our use cases, neural-only LLM gives you only 1.2% straight-to processing. Again, this is specific to our use cases. On the industry, there are, you see 30%, 35% in theoretical and research papers, and etc. But in our real-life use cases, we are able to see only 1.2 straight-to processing. However, we're a neurosymbolic approach. We are seeing over 80%, 90% straight-to processing rates. Depending on the complexity of use cases. So there's a huge gap there in terms of real-time implementation of agentic systems. And finally, essentially, this is kind of how we envision things. So it's for a travel claim, for an insurance use case, it's a combination of build-time actions by pre-processing documents, contracts, policies, laws, regulations, and building have a logic formalizer that works with large language models to process the cases. And and the decisions made in this logic formalizer is kind of like a rules engine, are stored in the long-term memory, and it just basically, the more engagement from the policy expert in this case, the better it gets over time. So this is basically the solution that seems to give the best result for what we're trying to achieve. However, okay, so will it ever be fully LLM based? The way I see, not with the current iteration of large language models. They're just not even close to being there, right? They do a lot of things well, but when it comes to reasoning, very complex tasks, especially long documents, like 50, 60, 70 page legal documents that even sometimes humans have hard time to understand, and because it's still like gray areas, large language models are nowhere near to being successful in. So what this requires is the next iteration of large language models, whatever you want to call it. And at this point, we're actually squeezing to the bottom, racing to the bottom, squeezing every performance out of the current generative AI models. And there needs to be a new iteration. So having said that, the whole AGI thing is not going to happen in the near term, unless there's a big breakthrough and something completely new comes up that is exponentially better than what's out here. I'll leave it here. There's some technical discussions later, but just kind of wanted to give you an overview of what we do and how we approach the whole agentic process automation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Karim. Great presentation. So also the chat is open for questions for the audience.
Yes,
so
Eddie,
please go ahead.
we have two questions in the chat.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want, I can read the first one.
Yes, please go ahead, because I don't see them.
Okay, so the first question is there a stable consensus classification of the various levels of abstraction noted? And how do we know where a digital asset falls among these levels?
It seems like it's a question for Professor Amit.
Yes, I think this question is for Professor Amit. So if you want to...
Sorry, what was the question?
So I read it again. Is there a stable consensus classification of the various levels of abstraction noted? How do we know where a digital asset falls among these levels?
The work on abstraction, especially in the context of AI, has received very little attention. I remember hearing a talk by Denis Haspasi's, the gentleman who got the Nobel Prize in chemistry, mentioning that, and a few people mentioning that, saying that this is the unsolved problem. But there is, what I try to present is something. Now, if there is something in the very old literature, I'm not quite aware of it. But the abstraction levels I showed in the analogy, for example, that has been, I think, our own and perhaps unique. I have not seen something like that before. And also along with the examples of analogies of all these kind of types at different levels of abstractions, I have not seen much of that work. Mylène Michel, the former student of Doug Hofstadter, frequently writes about analogy and abstraction, and her pieces are very useful, but those are more at example levels, not as a technology level, as far as I know. So it's an area that is rooted in this cognitive science, and we have to I think do a lot of interdisciplinary work before we can get to something that is going to be useful in practice.
All right, thank you. The second question is for you, Kerem. I don't know if you have access. You can read it and then answer.
Yeah, I can read it. Yeah, I mean, so it's kind of like a double-edged sword. You have, you need to have the technology to make this possible as well. You need to have the appetite for the enterprises to actually use this technology. So it usually works quite well when, from a top-down approach, where it's an executive decision to actually make this transformation, because it's a significant change, significant cost savings, and significant simplification of processes. It will be at a point that it'll be bottoms up as well, as this becomes the norm, but we're not quite there yet. We're still really scratching the surface on what's called this agentic process automation. So it will take time, but it's about having successful use cases, and which I believe we are in a position to have these the use cases with the right partners. I don't even call some of them customers; they're really partners, because they want to succeed together as much as we do. So just making these successful use cases is going to make this a norm, and it'll eventually get easier. What are the biggest challenges you face in adapting, implementing reasoning AI for automation of processes? Well, the challenge was actually trying to do this fully with large language models, right? We tried. We spent quite a bit of time. Again, we have great researchers in the company, and it's just that whatever you do, you don't get there. So, and we kind of start from a different. Our goal was always to, this was 100% STP, full autonomy and full automation, right? And how do we make that possible if not by using, large language models? So we worked the problem backwards, and how do we squeeze the most performance out of generative AI, large language models, yet try to be, have the checks and balances, control mechanisms, and bring it to a point that it doesn't make any mistakes, or very minimize the mistakes. So that kind of turned into, okay, we need a hybrid approach, and that ended up being a neurosymbolic AI.
Perfect. So no more questions. So let's move to the next presentation. I'm glad to have Professor Barry Smith, who is, let's say, the most widely cited contemporary philosopher. He has published some like 600 scientific papers and authored and or edited more than 20 books. Also, Barry has made influential contribution to the foundations of ontologies and data science and applications, especially in the biomedical and industrial domains and defense also. Something amazing about Barry is like he led the creation and international standards in ontology. This is the first world example of a piece of philosophy that has been subject to the ISO standard process. Most recently, Barry entitled "What Will Rule the World," and I'm happy that today we have the both authors of the book in our panel also. So we will discuss from his perspective as philosopher, but also from his perspective and background as applying ontologies and symbolic AI in real-world applications in biomedical and industrial and defense domains. So, Barry, the floor is yours. Please go ahead.
Great. Thank you, Hedi, and thank you for the invitation. So this is the title. I'm going to try and get beyond the hype. I agree with quite a lot of what my preceding speakers had to say, but I go a little bit further, and this is primarily through my collaboration with Jobs Landgräber, who has been working in the AI field for 20 years, and who actually founded the AI division of Alliance in Insurance, and was the director of AI at Alliance for quite some time. So we both believe that artificial general intelligence is impossible, and this is primarily for mathematical reasons, and the two central chapters of the book are about the reasons why AGI is impossible. That's the background. Now, the book was published in roughly the same week that ChatGPT was launched, and it's done quite well. It's the only long argument against the idea of AGI. So most people are suffering currently from fear of missing out. So they want to be on the right side of AI because everybody believes that AI is going to get better and better. We are, I think, unique in that we just think that AI in the strict sense, namely intelligent machines, are not possible. We can simulate intelligence in all kinds of ways, but we won't have intelligence on the side of the machine. So we were invited to create a second edition, and the final chapter in both editions is called AI Spring Eternal. So what we agree with in the prior speakers is that AI is a wonderful thing. It's bringing all kinds of benefits and values. Large language models are fantastic when they work. It's bringing social changes which are good, as well as social changes which might be bad. But then it's not the AI which is responsible for the bad things. It's the humans who use the AI for bad purposes. So everything I say from now on will be rather negative, but in the end, we are very positive about AI. All right, so what would it mean for a machine to be intelligent? Well, it would have to have what humans have, which is the ability to cope spontaneously and effectively with new environments involving complex phenomena. And the word complex here is a technical term, which I will come back to. And they can do this without any sort of training. And that's where the computers fail. They succeed where they can have training, but very often they don't have training because the environments are massive and changing all the time. Now, a good example of an environment which is massive and changing all the time is the environment we call human conversation. Every conversation is a new complex environment, and of course we can't have training data dealing with every conversation. So I'm repeating now what's been said, but LLMs work only in those areas where we have a lot of training data. And it can work then very impressively by bringing data from different spheres together in useful ways. So you might collect a lot of data about Near Eastern anthropology and a lot of data about Near Eastern literature and bring forward all kinds of interesting combination ideas built on those two bodies of data by the LLM. Some of those ideas, especially when they're expressed in the form of papers for publication, will be quite impressive. But there's nothing new there. It's a combination of what is in what is already said in those particular bodies of literature. And that will be the main thesis of this talk, that there's nothing new coming out of a stochastic parrot. But now the most common misunderstanding with regard to large language models is that all you need to make them work, in other words, to make them intelligent, to make them able to emulate human intelligence, is a matter of scaling, which means collecting large amounts of training data. And scaling doesn't work. So it did work. It worked very impressively for the first few versions of GPT. But now you see that scaling is tailing off. And OpenAI and the other companies at the top of the AI field have now recognized that scaling is not going to bring forward the solution that they were aiming for. Now they're looking at reasoning. But the reason why scaling doesn't work is that you need not just large amounts of data, you need representative data. So there are patterns in the domain that you're targeting. Unless you get representative data about those patterns, your machine will not reason correctly about those patterns. That's why hallucinations happen. And now getting representative data is harder and harder. So OpenAI has shifted its strategy. There was a certain amount of panic. They're now betting the farm on reasoning. But that's very difficult. We'd learned something of that from Amit. And so where can we get representative training data? Well, that's what the book is about, really. It's about the opposition between simple and complex systems. So simple systems are systems which we can build mathematical models of, which enable predictions to be made. And this applies to the solar system, to hardly any other real world system, but to all artifacts, all systems that we make, because we make them primarily by building mathematical models. So a self-driving car is a simple system. Every car is a simple system, always will be a simple system. And what this means is that each software update represents a modification of the original simple system into a new simple system, which captures a few more traffic phenomena. And gradually the car begins to appear more intelligent, but it's still a simple system. It's still working on mathematical deterministic software. And the goal is always, whenever there's an update, the goal is always to find a simple system. It has to be a simple system because only simple systems execute inside a computer. You want a simple system that gets close to the traffic reality in which the car will be used, which is a complex system. You are trying to get closer and closer in order to reach the desired safety level. But the traffic will always be a complex system. And but no, we have 3 thriving autonomous taxi services in San Francisco, or rather, they're not really thriving anymore. Cruise has already left the market. And what one discovers, if you look a bit deeper, is that the self-driving cars that we're talking about here are in fact being remotely not steered, but monitored by human beings who watch what's going on in the taxis, and then they occasionally send control inputs out to the taxis because something is going wrong. So we do not yet have self-driving cars. And we believe that there are all kinds of reasons for that, some of which I've mentioned. Other reasons we describe in the book. All right, now the hype. AGI is near. AGI as an intelligence can do all the things that humans, well, not quite all the things. So all the cognitive things, all the agentic things, all the reasoning things. We think that we can do all of those things, but only in those restricted cases where we can get representative sample data. So what can computers not do? The first case is conversation. We still, after 50 years, do not have any successful chatbot. I mean the kind of chatbot that will answer you when you call your bank. And that's why we hate calling the bank, because we know that we're going to have to talk to something which makes us talk in a way which no human wants to talk. An effective chatbot wouldn't do that. It would be as if we were talking to a human. So how do we manage in conversations? Well, the reason we can do it and machines can't do it is that we know what we want. When we engage in conversation, we always want something to achieve something. That might change through the conversation, but still, that's what steers the conversation. That's what makes it human-like. Machines don't have a will. They don't have volition. They don't give a damn. They are mathematical algorithms. All right, they can't engage in conversation. They can't start a conversation because they can't make spontaneous decisions. They can be programmed by humans to make what seem to be spontaneous decisions, but then the fact that they're programmed means that they're not spontaneous. And now when humans come together to form a complex system, there's no way we can get representative sample data pertaining to such coming together of humans, because in principle, every conversation is different and there are indefinitely many of them. We can't, and most of them we can't get data about. Half of all that data we can't get at all because it's inside the heads of the people who are engaging in conversation. So we cope spontaneously with ever new environments, ever new complex phenomena, even where we lack any sort of training. Humans can't do that. Now in 2020, Elon made this prediction. We will have AGI, and in fact more than AGI, in less than 5 years. And Gary Marcus, who is a pessimist, although not as extreme a pessimist as we are, offered Musk a bet that an AI will, by the end of 2025, not be able to perform these tasks. So drive off-road vehicles, walk into a kitchen and prepare a cup of coffee, babysit children, tend to the needs of an elderly person, and so forth. These are all things that computers can't do. They can't navigate through unknown terrain. They can't show empathy. They can't manage a company. They can't lead a riot control team. They can't resolve a dispute. Command a special forces squadron. They would need to do that, of course, if they were going to take over the world. Run an undercover agent. Gather information from participants in a traffic accident, and so on. There are many things which computers will never be able to do. Now, you might say these are not rational or reasonable or intelligent activities, but many of them involve human beings making very, very difficult and subtle decisions, collecting data in very, very difficult and subtle ways. Now, entrepreneurial perception is another example. Entrepreneurs perceive new opportunities, and they can do this. I mean, these are opportunities to make money. They can do this because they know what already exists, which opportunities have already been harvested, but they also know their customers, the people who will benefit from what they perceive. And then every act of creativity, every genuine, which means not accidental act of creativity, is going to be beyond the reach of computers. Every act of creativity requires a deep understanding of reality, where you're going to be being creative, and where it involves the ability to recognize a gap that was not foreseen, and of recognizing a way of filling it. So entrepreneurial perception, you will see, is a form of creativity. And to be creative, I'm thinking now of Dostoevsky, of course. the creative person has to have a deep knowledge of the parts of reality he's working with, a knowledge of the complex system to which he or she belongs, of the humans in that complex system who are going to exploit the creative act. For instance, a creative composer needs creative orchestra managers and creative violinists and creative trumpeters and so forth. And then, so Dostoevsky is not him, but him is my prime example. Dostoevsky made his money, which he needed to settle his gambling debts, by writing books which are painful to read. And this is a terrible conundrum. He was successful because he had a thorough personal knowledge of Russian and indeed of the whole of human society. This is empathy. And he had a thorough personal knowledge specifically of his readership and what they were reading and what they wanted to read. Then he created something entirely novel, which required his audience to pay money to engage in a painful experience. And I'll finish with this. So this is an example of hype creativity. So an AI-powered robot creates a painting of Alan Turing. And in the news item, which was the New York Times, we are told that the brainchild, that this painting was a brainchild of somebody called Aidan Meller, who has worked with a team of nearly 30 people to build the robot. Now, I think that we can infer from that we're not really here witnessing an act of machine creativity. If it's creative at all, then it's an act of machine creativity overwhelmed by the decisions of human beings. And that's the end.
Thank you, Barry, for this great presentation. We already have one question on the chat. I don't know if you see it.
Yeah. No, I can see the chat, but I can't see any question. I just see Stephanie.
No, this is the Q&A icon you need to click on.
Q&A icon. So let me just get out of my... maybe you can read it to me while I'm looking.
Yeah, so this especially due to their...
Here, I found it.
Yeah, okay, so... All
right. What approaches can we use to harden AI agents from cyber attack? That is a many-fold question. So first of all, the cyber attack is going to try and steal our data, or it's going to try and make our AI do things that we do not want it to do. And now, I think that actually I'm not going to give an answer to this question. I'm going to illustrate the way in which this question actually supports all my arguments. This kind of question cannot be answered by an AI without 20 times the amount of human support. All of those spies who are trying to work out what kinds of cyber powers our adversaries have are human beings who understand the way human beings think. And so there can be no AI solutions to such problems which do not rely on large amounts of human input, empathy, and also the opposite of empathy, which is understanding one's adversaries. So this is a very good question. My answer was not so good.
You have another comment from Robert.
So this is a comment. So thank you very much.
Yeah.
We're doing our best to keep pessimism alive.
I have a question regarding, the perspective as a philosopher. I had the chance to work with you, and I'm really impressed how you bring philosophy to action, to application, to resolve problems from application. So, if we are seeking for more powerful AI systems, how to bring, this capabilities for abstraction, reasoning, and so on. What topics from philosophy we need to look inside and to be inspired, maybe?
Good. So we have quite a setup in Buffalo to address these questions, as you know, because you were a part of it. You may still be a part of it. So the first idea is the idea that knowledge graphs can be used as supplements to large language models in such a way that they can throttle some of the hallucination tendencies of large language models by providing, in specific areas, authoritative, sometimes science-based representations of the relevant area. So this is work which was described also in Amit's talk. So we think that good knowledge graphs to serve that purpose need to be anchored in well-articulated, authoritative ontologies. And then those ontologies should in turn be anchored in a top-level ontology, which makes the ontologies themselves interoperable in relevant ways. And we've done this for 20 years now in the field of biomedical informatics, where we have a whole suite of interoperable ontologies, which are being used now in attempts to make large language model technology useful for biomedical research, by using these ontologies to create scientifically authoritative knowledge graphs.
Mm-hmm. I think Bernd has the same question. He said, "What are the most important development potentials between ontology and AI?"
I think that this knowledge graph idea is the most it's the low-hanging fruit at the moment. And Stefania wants to answer this question, it seems.
No, she's like checking that is answered.
Oh, I see. All right.
I'm taking notes of the questions that are answered, Barry.
Good. And then machines, this is the question from Sina. Machines can't create a new concept, can't be creative. Meanwhile, we're blocked to identify if the object is a new creation or just a repetition of an existing pattern. What should be our approach in handling all the new noises that are being created by generative AI engines? Good. So I will do a little bit of autobiography. Since the book was released, of course, Jobs and I have been checking very carefully all these new patterns which have been coming forth from the large language models. I find the large language models very useful, but only in the beginning, because when I start to read what they produce, it always slides away somehow from being exciting and well phrased and new. There are always problems, not problems in every sentence, but problems in every paragraph. So I don't think, I would really like to be able to have my papers written by a machine, but I don't think that that will ever be possible. And now, again, you're proving my point, Sina. The only way you can spot those slidings away from what we really need in a good essay is by using your human nose. So you sniff out that there's some problem with the sentence. And that sniffing is something that machines can't do. All right, and then from Joshua, so the neurosymbolic AI, I believe, is along with the knowledge graph idea, also a promising avenue to take. We've already taken it to some degree, of course, because all of the ontologies we've been building so far have been on the border of symbolic AI. Now, I don't know how much neurosymbolic AI or AIs have reached the maturity where they can be tested in order to establish whether they do indeed solve these problems of hallucinations and so forth in unknown environments or where there's a lack of data. I would say not. If you don't have any data, you can't create it synthetically. You have to create it by doing the work, doing the scientific work, for instance, in such a way as to have authoritative data. Authoritative data will be representative data, so it will be of help. But paying somebody to use a large language model to generate new synthetic data about an area where there is too little data. And that probably is a million, or I don't know, $100 million industry at the moment. That will get you nowhere.
Mhm. That's great. So we'll have more time for questions in the panel. So let's move to the next presenter from the European Investment Bank. Stefanov is a senior investment officer, and he's acting as investment advisor to the European Innovation Council. So I give him the floor to present his perspective and from his experience regarding the investment in AI innovation. So please go ahead, and then we'll move to the panel.
Thank you very much, Hedi. Can you hear me well?
Perfect.
Great. Thanks a lot. Very insightful words and thoughts from the panelists before me. Thank you very much. So I would speed up a little bit. We're slightly behind time, and probably we can then do a flying transition into the panel and tackle, any questions and answers about life, the universe, and everything. A joke, just let's keep it on the AI. So my name is Svetoslav Stefanov. I'm a senior investment officer with the European Investment Bank in a division which is acting as an investment advisor to the European Innovation Council Fund. So the EIC Fund is part of the EIC Accelerator program, and we are advising the deployment of about 3.7 billion fund, which supports start and scale up companies across Europe in breakthrough technologies. One of the topics obviously is AI, which is, I just looked through the portfolio so far. There is actually over 30 companies with close to 100 million, which is being invested in AI related companies. So that's a very prominent topic across our portfolio as well. And when I was looking also on the topic of this panel participation, investing in AI innovation, I was just kind of relating and thinking through how an AI would probably, analyze that. And that's very useful also to calibrate exactly what we will be talking about. So investing in AI innovation, probably, to bring it down and calibrate it, the first part would be investing. So probably it's important also to calibrate, who is investing? Is this a retail investor who is probably investing his salary and savings surplus, or is it a fund? So in this case, what I would be talking about is, from a point of view of a deep tech large fund with pan-European scope as the EIC fund. The second point is, what are we investing? This can also vary wildly. I mean, from money through talent, through in-kind IP, through infrastructure, and, additional support for building up the businesses. So from our point of view, this is obviously capital. So we invest up to 10 million per company. And so far, over 1 billion has been invested in more than 260 companies across the different jurisdictions in the pan-European coverage. And the third one, which is also very interesting, of course, is in what is the AI innovation, right? So in what do we invest? And here probably, before continuing, just a very brief kind of disclaimer, don't take, this is not an investment advice. Don't trust any random guy, that you can see on internet. So everybody should do their own research. I'm just saying and sharing a bit of perspectives how we are trying to think about AI from an investment perspective. And one of the reasons is because, people who have seen a lot of AI related proposals, there is one trend, which is a definite trend, that, there is quite a generous usage and inflation into, slapping AI on almost like every investment proposal. So in that sense, I think what the way that we think about it, and the first step about it, is probably to try to categorize a little bit, or to focus and to understand where the particular investment proposal fits. And in this way, I mean, there is an interesting way that we have seen that it works fairly well, is just to think about it as layers, right? So, and jokingly, you know, we are saying, okay, let's look at these layers from the silicon to the science fiction. And in each of these layers, virtually one needs to look into quite different components of the proposition of this investment opportunity. I mean, if we start down, you know, from the first layer, which, you know, the silicon layer, so that's the infrastructure layer. Obviously, you know, we're talking about proposals which are in hardware, which is needed to run the compute related to artificial intelligence systems. Also, you know, a lot of the data storage, a lot of the data center infrastructure, a lot of the you know, fundamental building blocks and frameworks. So that's one layer which has certain characteristics, which is, you know, fairly high concentration of players. You have, you know, a very high capital intensity of the sectors. And I mean, in terms of risk, it's a dancing with elephants, right? So you have large players, you know, just naming a few, like NVIDIA and AWS and, you know, a few other players who are in that space. So as a new entrant, one needs to have a very credible proposition and plan from the outset how to break into, you know, this kind of club of giants, and also be very well aware about the capital that would be needed, you know, to fight this battle. So on the flip side, of course, I mean, the opportunity, if one gets there, I mean, that's a very a space which has a very high potential. And if one really has real chances to become one of the leading players, I mean, usually that's a space also which has a very high network externalities and very high protective barriers to entry about new competition. So it's a very interesting space. However, you know, very risky one, very expensive one. So when looking at that layer, one needs to be very well aware what actually the characteristics of that one is. So the next one moving up is, you know, we're moving to a layer which is more, you know, the model layer. So this is the layer where you have the AI models, and that layer has different characteristics again, right? So, I mean, you have the algorithms and the LLMs. So the main point there is, I mean, it's again a fairly large capex type of a play. So you need a lot of data to train the models. Obviously, you need the capacity to build them, and you need talent. So I mean, this is very so proposals which come from this space need to be very credible, that they can also, you know, come with the right people who have the knowledge and the credibility and the experience in order to be successful in building these fundamental models. The risks in that layer is that, you know, what we have also seen in recent models, you know, coming from other geographies, is there is some pressure also from open sourcing of a lot of components. So one really needs to take this into consideration as well. The reward, obviously, and the opportunity is also very high, right? So if one manages to establish themselves as one of the leading models, especially if one can build and train the models on proprietary, hard to copy data, I mean, that's obviously a very high barrier to entry to competition and a very significant moat that one can build in this layer, right? So then moving to the next layer, obviously we have, you know, the layer of the use cases. So that's the application layer. I mean, these are virtually vertical applications, which usually are industry specific. I mean, some of them can be cross-implemented across different industries as well. You know, again, to one of our core topics about the current talk, abstraction, right? So a lot of the learnings from a certain industry can be abstracted and can be applied into a different industry which has similar problem set and a similar set of potential outcomes. So on this application layer, I mean, you have a different dynamic, right? So it's not that much capital intense anymore, like the first two layers, but you have different challenges, right? So one of the key ways of looking at it is usually like companies which are very successful in this space are ones who have, like, obviously the management teams of these companies have deep understanding about the industry in which this application thrives. So one can think about it like, if there was no AI in this world, I mean, those would be typical people who have deep industry knowledge, solving with some information technology means these business problems, and AI comes now on top of it as a booster of a technology which can solve these business problems into the particular industry. So, I mean, the risks in this space is definitely, differentiation and potential obsolescence. So, one needs to clearly define how you are unique and how you will stay unique in all the competition, because ultimately, most of these vertical applications, they're using the same fundamental components, from the infrastructure layer and also from the model layer. So the innovation comes into how do they apply it and how do they adapt it into the particular business problems in order to solve this problem with the best possible outcomes, and build it in such a type of a defensive business so that it can be hardly copied, that it can stay relevant versus competition or versus additional disruption from potential AI, which builds upon and tries to solve these problems, replacing the particular business model of the company. So what's the reward in that section? I mean, it doesn't need so much capital to get into investments like this, and it can be much easier to raise capital, just because this is much more reliable in terms of, or relatable in terms of a business problem, which is what can be solved, and one can start generating revenues fairly quickly. So we're not talking about fundamental technology development with horizon of 10 plus years. We're talking about application technology which can start generating revenues and prove its viability in a much shorter time. I mean, on the flip side, obviously defensibility in that sector is one of the critical risks, and yeah, the other risk is also the market is getting crowded. So one really needs to think how to differentiate and stay relevant. The other layer that we have seen as well, which is also a very interesting layer. I mean, it's like building again, like on the abstraction and analogy with the gold digging industry, right? So a lot of companies during the gold digging periods were not making profits from digging gold, but from making shovels and picks and all the other tools which are needed. So we call it kind of like the glue or the enabler layer. So this is a layer of such type of business models which are AI related, which are used as an enabler for either an application case or infrastructure case or a model case. I mean, just a few examples. You have a lot of companies which work on AI traceability, right? Just to illustrate how a model makes a decision. What are the transparency steps towards bringing a certain decision, so that one can really trace backwards, how this decision has been taken. Other type of companies in that segment are companies which are testing models for certain properties, be it whatever, ethical or, conform with certain regulations. I mean, you have obviously a lot of industry specific regulations in industries like healthcare or financial services. So when building models in these spaces, there is a lot of kind of testing of the new models to make sure that they are conform with the regulations in the particular space. And companies which are enabling this testing obviously fall exactly in that enabler segment. The risks of that space, I mean, similarly to risks in the application space, it is how do you differentiate yourself and what is exactly the value proposition? The other risk is obviously, if the enabler model is related to certain regulations change. So one really needs clearly to have the capability of keep the versioning and the compatibility to different regulatory standards or states in order to be able to tackle properly the outcomes of these models. The reward is that if one strikes it right, and these type of tools, they manage to be embedded into the business processes and the workflows of their customers. I mean, these are fairly sticky models. So what one can create a very high barrier to entry to the network effect that applications like this could have. Yeah, and also usually, they're not that capital intense as the layers which are preceding that. And
that's perfect. I will maybe continue. Yeah, yes, please.
The last but not least, just to mention that quickly, I mean, obviously there is no kind of technology space if you don't have the moonshots, right? So this is the moonshot layer. I mean, those are like very visionary type of applications. I mean, we're talking about, the spaces of artificial general intelligence or brain machine interfaces. So those are obviously plays which are very long term. The probability of the outcome is very, unsure. And obviously, they need a lot of capital to develop. But still, the potential reward is that can be, a new dimension into this technology. So more or less.
Thank you. That's great. Like for this overview. Yeah, that's amazing to have this overview from, let's say, investment background, and maybe that's also will allow us to open the panel. So I'm happy also to invite Jobst Landergry, medical doctor. He studied medicine, I think, biochemistry and mathematics. He is the co-author of the book that Barry mentioned, and he has a long experience in as a researcher, but also as an actor in industry, and also as entrepreneur. So a very good background. Jobs, happy to have you in this panel. And let's start with you to have your feedback regarding the hype of AI, the current state, real, because behind the hype there is real state of the AI landscape, and then how you see the future on that.
First of all, Hedi, thanks a lot for inviting me. It's great to be here. So maybe to make it very brief, AI is applied mathematics, and it's based on identifying regularities in data, or using regularities from knowledge and applying those, which is what the first two speakers were also talking about, which can be done by ontologies, knowledge trees, and so on. And of course, also combining the identification of regularities in data with formalized knowledge. And the question is really setting all the scientific questions and the question, can they be AGI or not, aside, that is really matters to the European Union, but also to business, is how can one make money from AI, and how, or that's a business question, or how can also administrations make good usage of AI? So what are the real applications? And if we look at this, we see that nowadays what can really be done with AI, despite the tremendous success of LLMs and their impressive character, what we can really achieve is rather little. So there's not so much money made yet with AI, right? There are some great usages. So for example, one important usage by the state is public surveillance, because you can now identify a person perfectly by the face, but also by the gait, by how a person walks. So public surveillance is an example where AI is very important for the basic layer of surveillance. That's a public sector application. Another very important application is warfare. So at the Ukraine front, both sides have massive AI usage for the purpose of understanding what's happening. So for signal detection. So if they wouldn't have it, they would both already have lost totally, and it has changed the face of war fundamentally. So there are some examples of very important applications, but overall, the productivity gains over the last 10 years, since AI became, relevant again, since Google came up with Google Translate, that's now 12 years ago, the productivity gain has been very moderate. It's almost unmeasurable. You almost cannot measure a productivity gain through AI across countries which are adopting it. And I can say more about why that's the case. So when will this change? Yes, to some extent. But if you think of what productivity increments are possible, then you have to always look for places to find regularities that you can tackle with AI. And there are less than one would think. And many of those which are present have already been exploited, especially in manufacturing. So I think in manufacturing, there's still room for improvement, but it's not so much anymore. There are a lot of now pockets of production process where it's very hard to get the AI in. And outside manufacturing, in white-collar jobs, it's even harder, as Kerem can testify. I've been doing what he does for 10 years, right? AI for insurance, first at Allianz and then with my own company, Cognotech, which still exists. And one of the reasons I stopped doing this is that the automation is extremely hard, and that has to do with the nature of the data. So that get produced and their character. And so I'm not at all an AI pessimist. I've now been making a living from using AI and also designing new AI systems, building them, thinking about them for 25 years. So it's very useful, but its real applications are quite limited, and especially they require a lot of care in understanding where regularities occur and how to leverage and utilize them. And a lot of money is being wasted by the public sector, but also by private companies who are naive about the AI usage and who are carried away by the hype and then create big investment graves. So I've reviewed many of those and also explained to the stakeholders what went wrong and tried to teach them how to prevent mistakes. But this is typical for hype situations, and people fall into this trap. So overall, it's a great technology. I use it since a quarter of a century now. Therefore, nothing surprises me so much. Nevertheless, one has to be careful where one can really use it and where it creates benefit. And there are many pseudo use cases where it's claimed that it would be super useful, but the utility is rather low. So to finish with one, and then I'm done for this round, with one quick example, because on the panel I don't want to speak too long, with one quick example. So I just did a long project for a biotech for 1.5 years almost, to help them to use AI in their entire R&D process. And the acceleration, so there's basically the acceleration with AI of the research process is very little. And the savings can be, in some situations, you can save 10 or 15% of the research costs. But overall, due to the complexity of the biological systems, it's very, very hard to find regularities that can be exploited. This is just one example. There are also positive examples, but the bottom line is you always need to identify the regularities that you want to exploit, and also have the experience that you need to know which regularities are exploitable and which are not. And this is for the first round.
That's perfect. So that's when we see this, impact by sector and applications of AI. But I have a question regarding, and this is maybe for Barry as philosopher, and then we will go through other panelists, is the future relationship between humans and AI. How can we best prepare for it in terms of relation? Because for sure it will change our lives in terms of interaction with AI systems. So how we can describe this future relationship and how we prepare ourselves to that?
So I think this question is very much like the question, how will humans live with TV or wireless or telephones or trains or humans are very flexible. That was where I started. We are adaptable. And if there are no horror stories to fear, and we don't believe that there are horror stories, leaving aside war and such things, then we should come through this change in just the way that we came through previous cultural, technological changes. So the subtitle of our book is AI Without Fear. And that's because we know from our own communities that there are people who really are afraid of AI. They think it's going to take over the world, and they are just making a mistake.
That's a good question, but I mean, as you said, like in terms of complex and simple system, is it possible that a combination of simple systems can create a complex system that can do things and be like, okay, go through this risky direction in terms of AI that can rule the world?
Maybe I should take this one on, Barry, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
So when you combine simple systems, mathematically speaking, you are creating a series of operators or functionals. If each of the operators or functionals is which are concatenated, is a simple system, you can mathematically prove that you will always obtain a simple system. And this you can easily see, because if they run on a computer, you can decompose every of these operators and functions into Turing machine or into church recursive functions. So ultimately, every AI function or operator can be translated, and that's actually done in the computer when everything is compiled into a machine language, into assembler. Basically, everything is compiled into instructions for the processor, which can be represented as recursive church functions. And so recursive church functions are mathematically always simple system characteristics. They cannot be complex system-like. And you can see this very clear when you look at the properties of complex systems. You cannot map them into mathematics, let alone into Turing functions, which are only a subset of mathematics. So you cannot accept a simple system to emulate a complex system. What you can though do is that you can take certain aspects of a complex system and translate these into a complex system, especially for closed word problems like chess.
It's a simple system.
Into simple systems like chess, Go, and other ego shooter games where now already computers have been superior to humans for a while. That's because these are closed systems, and there you can actually have some aspects of the output of complex systems modeled as simple systems, and then you can outperform them. Especially in all these cases, it's possible to formulate the optimization problem as a reward problem with reinforcement learning. Whenever you can use reinforcement learning, which is also used to train large language models, then you can obtain very impressive effects for partial emulation of complex systems. But the total emulation cannot come about spontaneously because of the essential limitations of mathematics. And so therefore the composition, it's called the composition operator in mathematics. The composition of functionals and operators into longer functionals and operators does not change their fundamental character.
Mm-hmm. All right, that's great. I have a question for Kerem regarding, you have mentioned that Deep Opinion is research-driven startup. And I know, we had discussion before regarding research activities you are doing, but how much let's say the role of interdisciplinarity can impact in terms of, let's say, deal with the current limitation. I have example, when I have Barry, I have Jobs, they have different backgrounds, and it's amazing what they are, the outcomes is coming from them. So if you can give perspective from startup regarding this multidisciplinarity in terms of research.
It's kind of interesting, and the way research happens. It's just that AI evolves and evolves and gets better and better. and it builds a hype. In every level, there's a hype. Every few years, there's a hype, and that hype's kind of go in the same. We kind of run in circles as human beings. We go with the hype. We think that it's going to solve. As the next iteration is going to solve all these problems. But when we realize there are limitations, we end up combining the latest technologies with the researchers that were released 30, 40, 50 years ago. It kind of like always comes back in full circle that the ideas that were actually developed in the past, which were not possible, with the technological limitations, now actually makes sense to combine. So it's important to have an open mind as a researcher, to not think of just put your all eggs in one basket in terms of, okay, latest technology is going to solve everything, but actually have an open mind, just going back and just it's kind of like putting the puzzle pieces together on how you can build a system that actually works. And it cannot be just researcher mindset driven. So it's research driven, but researcher mindset driven are different things, right? You need
this
to
is
have
very important. It was my next question for you, because usually there is a gap, and this is what EIC are trying to do, is to bridge the gap between the lab, making research in the lab, and going to the market with real product and so on. So that's very important. How to bridge this gap? And you start to answer this.
Yeah, it's a bridging gap is generally in a lot of the companies, researchers are kind of in their own space, right? And they just do research, and then somehow that tries to be productized and with a go-to-market strategy. It does create a huge gap in terms of what really will work in the market, rather than just spending so much time and just doing something incredible. It might actually be an incredible research piece, but if it's not going to work in the market, is kind of like pointless, right? So we try to ensure that we have a bridge, that there's always a product mindset, company mindset, execution mindset injected into the research groups. They actually work together with us on the research decisions, on the product decisions, not just machine learning that works behind the scenes. And that's very critical. As the researcher mindset is also very critical. We're lucky to have people in our research group that actually have that business acumen, and not just as pure researchers, but I think that's critical. You just cannot be researcher mindset driven, but you can be research driven. I guess that kind of explains what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, that's great. I will also ask Jops the same question, because you played those different roles. If you can give us your feedback, what you learned as experience to success this move from research mindset to market mindset.
So I think I have never seen a big difference. But it's also a matter of personality, I think. So the only difference, I've switched between the two roles several times, and I'm still doing both at the same time, because I have a guest professorship at the University of Lugano for philosophy. And for 5 years, I was guest professor at Barry's University. So since a long time, I've been in both. And I think it's just a question what problems you want to solve. And so in academia, if you do good research, and not what I call paper basket research, but good research, in AI, you want to either, what we are doing, think about, the limits of AI, what can AI do, that's philosophy, or you can also, what I also did a lot of research about, is finding new combinations of AI systems, improving AI algorithms. And this is the scientific part. And then the business part is just, how can these algorithms be used to solve a business problem? But you need to know the mathematics. You need to then look at the problem, decompose it into its part, and exactly like Kerem showed, then address a certain problem with a certain algorithm, create the right output for the next algorithm, build a chain of algorithms. And so I don't see a big difference in the two activities. It's just what it's used for, right? And to what degree you are free to also abstract from the necessity to produce money, right? And if you don't have to produce your money, you have a bit more freedom. But in the end, I don't see from the intellectual activities no big difference. But the cultures are very different, and therefore it's not so usual that people move around between the two cultures. But I don't see a fundamental difference, and I like to do both, because I like variation, and both offer different challenges, and both are very interesting.
That's great. So I will also ask the question to Stefano. You have mentioned regarding, I mean, the success is based on having a great team that can work together. So what are the other key success enablers to have an innovative AI startup that can bring impact to the market from your perspective?
I mean, again, coming back to these layers, I think, the first thing is just to see where the company is, right? So in terms of positioning, and based on that, there are different elements which needs to be present and different risks, which, one might look at and see what can be a risk mitigation. So, I will not go through all 5 layers and distinguish everything, but I'm seeing a question also in the Q&A, which is also related to that. Probably, I will partially ask that question, which will also link into this topic. In terms of risk mitigation, I mean, there are 2 points of view, right? So the first one is definitely, when you're making an investment decision, you're acting on the best possible information you have at that time, in a sense that you are obviously trying to predict and to hedge some risks, but you need at some point to make a decision. So is it the perfect decision? Probably not, but it's better to take a decision rather not to make a decision. So in that sense, the question, there were 2 parts mainly, one, dependency on semiconductors and more or less like compute capacity. Let's abstract it to a compute capacity. I mean, in that sense, if we see in a certain investment proposition that there is a very heavy dependency on a single supplier or a very small set of suppliers for, compute capacity, I mean, that's a red flag, obviously. And then the question is, A, can this be, diversified so that, you can have more potential options, or B, can you build in an abstraction layer? So ultimately that, you are then kind of hedged against future changes or increasing of the power of a certain supplier. I mean, on the other side, about data sovereignty and, potential changing data protection legislation and compliance. First of all, I mean, and this is, integrity, and one looks whether the company is, regulatory compliant, in a sense that, that's the first and paramount risk assessment, is whether they play by the rules. And that's also part of this whole integrity check, in a sense that, okay, are the key people in the company, ready and adaptable enough to be able to have the high integrity to follow the rules, and B, to also be open, to change the playbook if the rules change, which will definitely do. So these are the 2 things, integrity and adaptability, that one needs to look into the team, but also, in the capability of the systems and the technology, whether, it has built-in integrity, risk mitigation, and also built-in capability for quick adaptability.
So we are running a bit over the time, but I have one quick question for all of the panelists. So if you can be brief to answer that, how do you see, the AI scope, the AI area, the AI space, next 5 to 10 years, what we will see, and what are your expectation in terms of investment, in terms of funding, in terms of exploration? How do you see it? So I start with Barry, and then we go through all of you.
So I made a prediction like this twice in connection with the share price for NVIDIA. On both occasions, I predicted that it would crash. On both occasions, it did crash the very next day, but then it rose again. So I don't think that we can make predictions on that scale. I think that what we should do is think about deep questions such as, what can Europe do in such a way that the USA does not have a monopoly on interesting AI developments? That would be, and that's a hard question, of course. What would you do if you were in charge, Hedi?
It's part of my question. I say, okay,
Yeah.
which directions with funding? Like, I mean, we need to open and areas
So
to explore.
I will say something directly about that. I think that the US takes the view that you don't need to regulate AI. I think that the EU takes the view that you do need to regulate AI. I would suggest that the European Union should become more flexible. It should not try to regulate AI because that's a circus. It's growing and growing. And if you try to regulate it, you'll get your hands dirty. But what you should try to do is to regulate the ways AI can be used.
This is the fact, because the AI regulation, the AI Act, is about risks of AI. It's about AI safety. We are not regulating AI. This is part of the speculation in terms of what Europe is doing.
You haven't been doing your public relations properly.
Maybe, but we are trying to explain this, and big players are like, I mean, they are with us to, like, I mean, to explain to them and to the startups that it's not about regulating AI, it's regulating the safety and the risks of AI. All right, so Kerem, what do you think? Next 5-10 years, what should we do? What are your predictions in terms of AI innovation?
Well, I mean, it's here to stay. So it's not like, I mean, it's there is a hype, but not with AI itself. It's just where AI is today. And so I think it's going to go in waves. We are kind of peaked, and it just seems to be plateauing now. There's so much money went into it, and then it's plateauing now, and it'll probably slow down a bit. But until that next iteration of whatever that next iteration is I don't know. Like it's probably a large innovation, a big innovation. Next iteration of large language models, whatever they're called. It's more about the applications it's more about leveraging AI at this point, rather than creating value by leveraging AI, rather than core AI, like money going into core AI, I think. For the next couple of years. But then, behind the scenes, there will be institutions and larger corporations and etc. who are going to build that next big thing. Then we're gonna go into the next phase, essentially.
All right, Jobst.
So I think that we are going to see, under the pressure of many economic factors that are now materializing, global competition and failure or decline of the Western growth model, we are going to see a pressure on the adoption of AI. And I think we can expect, if we do everything that's possible, a single-digit productivity increase over the next 5 years, by putting AI everywhere we can. So this is basically what I think is I think this one can be said. As to the further evolution of AI, I think that it's now slowing down because there was an invention. The inventions made that enabled the LLMs have now been, in a way, leveraged. There will be new inventions, but the problem that we cannot mimic complex systems will not go away. And so I expect moderate productivity improvements. But if you think that we have not had productivity improvements on average in the West over the last 10 years, that's already a lot, right? To get 5 to 10%. And this is what I hope we will be able to witness. And that's the main thing I'd like to say.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. Stefanov, last words about next 10 years, even from investment perspective?
Yeah. A very easy question, right? So looking into the crystal ball, I mean, apart from the obvious answer, 42, right? No, joke aside, I mean, just looking very broadly, I think, there are 3 things which is highly likely to see, looking at what is happening right now and the trends. I mean, one of them is this multimodality that we are seeing right now, which is bubbling, will continue growing. So you will have, models which will be able to handle, text, data, pictures, videos, everything, and also different senses, right? So, I mean, we can move the frontier much further into other senses, which a model can handle. So the multimodality is one of them. The second one is, I think we would see also something similar to what we have seen in semiconductors, which is kind of miniaturization and moving to the edge. So edge AI type of applications where, you know, a lot of the compute will be happening not in the cloud or in a large system, but it will be happening as a pre-processing on edge nodes and then just feeding information or decisions, you know, into a single system. And the last but not least, and probably, you know, the most important one, explainability, you know, and this is the quest, like just to, because these systems are getting more and more complex. So at a certain point in time, you know, I mean, we need to still be able to understand why the outcome is this and not that. And I think, you know, this quest for explainability is obvious. And that ties into, you know, a bit of a bigger topic in a sense that more or less what the humanity is doing right now, it's kind of, you know, bringing up an AI and training it and raising it up. I mean, you can make the abstraction and parallel to raising up a child. And among those of us who have children, you know, how this, you know, that's not a straightforward job in a sense that you cannot be always there, try to protect and regulate and say yes and no. Ultimately, it boils down to one thing, right? How do you bring these small people, or in this sense, you know, this artificial intelligence up, in a sense that, you know, we need to just instill good values into the system so that it can, you know, come to good outcomes.
That's great. That's like summarize our commitment in the European Commission regarding the responsible AI. So we regulate safety, we regulate risks. We are committed to make AI responsible and to do innovation on that. That's why we create these webinars, to be in touch with the community, to discuss the future. Behind the hype, we need to develop more things on that topic. And we're happy to share with the community the feedbacks and to collect insights from you as distinguished speakers and also the community with the discussions. So I would like to thank you again for your time, for your insightful presentations and thoughts. I would like also to thank the attendees. So you will receive, all of you, the link for registration for the next webinar. And Stefania, maybe you can share the survey that people can also answer. Yes.
Yes,
Thanks a
sure,
lot.
Hedi. So thank you, Jobst. I asked the participant to stay just a couple of minutes because we have prepared a very quick survey to collect inputs from your side.
I have the next call now. I'm sorry. Maybe you can send it to me. It's already 12 minutes. I have already delayed my call by 10 minutes. Now I need to go. Thanks a lot.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
thank you, Jobst.
Thank you.
Okay, so thank you also, Jessica, for sharing your screen with the Mentimeter survey. So a part is more linked with the content of the today webinar, and the second part is more on your satisfaction degree regarding the organization. So please, you can use the code or the QR code to access the Mentimeter survey, and then we can start sharing the questions, Jessica.
Yes, thanks, Stefania. So this is the, as Stefania said, this is the number, the code to be included in menti.com, or you can also use a QR code to go through the very quick survey that we have prepared. The first part is about the aim to gain now let's say a knowledge validation about this webinar. So AI Insight, knowledge validation. So we would like to ask you, what are the main gaps to develop and adopt these AI capabilities? So in your, sorry, in front of you, you should be, okay, perfect. I see that somebody's.
Jessica, very quickly, sorry, I really need to leave, so I have a call
Yes.
starting in 1 minute.
No problem.
Thank you very much.
No problem.
Thank you,
Thanks a lot.
Svetoslav.
Thanks
Thank
a
you.
lot. We
you.
know that
They
we are
need-
beyond the time, so no problem if you have to leave.
So
of
in the
course.
meanwhile, people
Yes,
are
yes.
answering.
Thanks to
Yes,
everybody.
thank you, thank you. I stay in this slide, so you have time to reply to this survey. Of course, if you would like to add some inputs or anything else, or comment anything about anything, please contact us so we can also include these your comments into our, let's say, survey, so we can understand if this type of webinars are really useful for you. So I would go through the second slide. There are really not so many questions, but we would like to go further. So I will move. So thanks a lot for the ones who are replying. So what is the most risk impact of such capable AI from your perspective? Perspectives. You see, there are four answers that we have prepared. So if you would like to answer. At the end of this presentation, you will have also the, let's say, the blank space in which you can also write your comments. Or, as I said before, if you would like to send us an email, you are invited to do so, so we can gain your comments. Okay, I will go in some seconds to the next one. Sorry that we are going fast, but just because we are really beyond the timeline that we have set before. Okay, thanks a lot for everybody who's voting. Okay, I'm going to the next one. So what is the main opportunity of AI innovation from your perspective? Also here you see four answers. It's a closed question, of course. So you can see what do you think about this question? Okay, 8 people. Thanks a lot. Okay, I think that we can go to the next one because I see no more question, no more answer. Okay, so what is your recommendation for the future innovation in AI, which is really a relevant question for this webinar today? Okay, I see that a lot of people is answering a really different question, really different type of replies. So this is also really interesting for us, so we can understand also your perspective on this. Okay, thanks a lot. I see that okay, I think that you have stopped answering. I can go on to the next one. So this is more about our webinar organization and the satisfaction survey about this webinar. So we would like to know how satisfied were you with the content presented during this webinar. Of course, this is really interesting for us in order to understand how we can improve also our organizational aspects for the next webinars, the ones that Hedi has presented at the end, really at the beginning of this webinar. Okay, thanks a lot. I will go to the next one. So if this webinar has helped in increasing your knowledge regarding to the topic, so the EI capabilities, we are really happy to see this answer, of course. Okay, some more seconds, and then I will go to the last questions that we have prepared for you. Thanks a lot. Okay, we'll go to the next one. So if you are satisfied about the webinar organization, so the organizational aspect, the communication that we have, a communication campaign that we have carried out, and the invitation, the registration process, and so on. So everything that is about the organizational aspect. So we can, of course, adjust anything if you have some comments about this. Okay. Okay, I think that I can go on to the last one, I think. Okay, so there are two ones more. You have already received this question in your registration form. So if you would like to know more about our next webinars that we are organized in the context of EI together with the program manager Hedi Karray. So of course, if you would like to stay more informed about these activities, but also many more activities, we're really glad that you are interested in staying informed. So thanks a lot also for that. And I think this is the last one. Yes. So if you would like to share any additional comment or feedback, you can write here. Of course, as I said before, if you would like to, all replies are anonymous, so don't worry about that. But if you would like to also to add any comments or suggestion, anything else, please contact us via email also afterwards. So we were really glad to read your comments. Okay, I guess that you maybe.
So thank you very much again and again. So yeah, we keep in touch for further collaboration in the future and for our upcoming webinars. Thank you. Bye bye.